You're listening to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast, where we discuss whatever the fuck we want to. And yes, we can put sex and drugs and Jesus all in the same bed and still be all right at the end of the day. My name is Devannon, and I'll be interviewing guests from every corner of this world as we dig into topics that are too risque for the morning show, as we strive to help you understand what's really going on in your life. There is nothing off the table, and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's dive right into this episode. Hey, all my lovely peoples out there. Thank you so much for tuning into the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast again one more week. I appreciate you very fucking much. Now today I'm delighted to be talking to my sister, Kim Sorrelle, who is the author of Love Is, and also another book called Cry Until You Laugh. Now, this is our second interview, and in this episode, we're continuing our conversation about hoodoo and voodoo and witchcraft. I'm going to give you my personal story of how I was a victim of witchcraft, and then we're throwing shade at judgmental Christians and churches because for some unknown reason, they don't seem to get the point that the whole reason to read the Bible is to improve yourself, not other people. Take a listen to this episode. Hey, sister girl. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, my brother?
I am marvelous. And I am so goddamn happy to have you back with me today. I feel like it was divine providence. It was meant to be and everything like that. The last time that we did an interview, when it was over, I felt like I just didn't want to let you go. And I feel like that God has bonded us and infused our souls together. And I have a feeling that we're going to be seeing a lot more of each other in the days to come.
I think exactly the same way, and I'm so happy about it, I have to say, because I feel like we are meant to know each other. We are meant to be friends. We are meant to be in each other's lives, and I love it.
Absolutely. And so on the last show, we covered stuff like the bout you and your husband went through with cancer, how it is being a widow and everything like that. Since the husband that we were speaking about, as you put it in your book, Love Is, was gifted with a ticket to heaven. It was either Love Is or Cry Until You Laugh. One of those books that one liner was in there and it stood out to me. And we talked about how you received your cancer medical diagnosis on a voicemail. We talked about how I got my HIV diagnosis on a voicemail, and that was a whole thing because doctors shouldn't do that.
Ever, never, ever.
and, and then we happily hopped down a rabbit hole and talked about the health benefits of black licorice for quite a while,
Yeah. So it was good how we stayed just in one direction, kept on just one topic the whole time.
right?
Yeah.
So Kim Sorrelle, she's an author, she's an entrepreneur, a speaker, cancer survivor, and a lover of black licorice, as we were just talking about. Now, you got two books. One's called Love Is, one's called Cry Until You Laugh. Your website is kimsorrelle.com. Of course, that will be in the showy notes, as I always put it, but I'll just spell it. It's KIMSORRELLE.com. So I want you, for both of those books, why did you title Love Is, and why did you title Cry Until You Laugh, Cry Until You Laugh?
Well, Crying Until You Laugh is the journey of being diagnosed with cancer, and 4 months later, my husband being diagnosed with cancer, and then losing him 6 weeks later. And so I wrote for a bit over a year. And when you go through stuff like that, you cry, and it's good to cry. You're going to grieve it, and grief can be healthy. You need to recognize it and grieve it. And so, but there has to be a moment when you allow yourself to laugh again, when you don't feel guilty, thinking that you're somehow dishonoring the one who has left or their life, or stopping wallowing in self-pity or self-doubt or whatever. that you can release that and laugh again. You have to be able to do that. So that is the cry until you laugh. And then love is because it's a book about what love really is. And I used a 2,000-year-old poem. Love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast. It has 14 love ises and love isn't in it. So love is was a pretty natural title for that one.
I love how you describe that Hebrew scripture, the 2,000-year-old poem. I think that's very beautiful.
That's what it is. That yeah.
Because she's talking about an excerpt from, I believe, First Corinthians 12 or 13. I think it's First Corinthians 13. And it's from a letter that the Apostle Paul had written to the church at Corinth. And she's describing it as a poem. And so I think that that's very cool to point out, because the Bible is, a collection of writings, and it can be looked at in 1,000 different ways. And so I think that that's a beautiful perspective to have on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you look at the Bible that way and you read the Bible that way, that it's a collection of poems and stories and life events, just it's just a beautiful book that has all these different elements put together, written by different people during different times. And if you look at it that way, it's not so intimidating, right? It's just a beautiful scripture.
Well, I don't think that the Bible is ever meant to be intimidating. It's a collection of people's thoughts and their wisdom and their mind for the set of knowledge that they had at the time. And so I look at it from, okay, this is someone else's life that I'm looking at. What can I learn from it? What's going to serve me here? And I really wish more people would look at the Bible from like a self-improvement aspect, as opposed to how can I go into this Bible and find out what's wrong with everybody else?
Yeah, so true. So true. And there is so much to learn. I mean, there's so much to learn. Every time I read something that I've read before, I see something different in it. It's so unique that way that it's constantly giving if you let it.
Right. And I want to issue that warning to people who are starting spiritual paths and spiritual journeys and stuff like that, to let the focus always be you. It's so easy to get caught up in self-righteousness and judging other people when you get going, walking with God or being a Christian specifically. I cannot say that I have had this experience with people I've interacted with from other faiths. The whole judging people thing, and that from my experience so far in my almost 40 years of walking this earth, that almost seems to be exclusively Christian, just from my take on it. Somebody who I no longer affiliate with, he was telling me, when I first met him, he was like agnostic, he didn't believe in anything, whatever, and he had some sort of come to Jesus moment. And now he was going to someone's church or some sort of religious group or whatever. And I asked him, whenever somebody tells me that, the first thing I asked him, okay, well, what do you think about the LGBTQIA plus community? Because I'm in that community and I need to know if I'm talking to somebody who thinks that there's something wrong with me. Because if that's the case, we can no longer continue to associate, because I'm not going to abuse myself like that. And so, then he got into the whole, well, I'm just saying what the Bible says. If the answer to that question is anything other than no, you all are perfectly fine, that means you think something's wrong with us. No matter how you try to, no matter how you try to wrap it, And I cannot tell you how many times I've asked people who try to come on my show, or people who in various ways I meet them, where they stand on this. And they've got some sort of vaguish sort of, well, it's, all sin's bad. No, 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 no. There's only two right answers to that question. You could be like neutral and just not give a fuck one way or the other, if you've had the awakening to understand that you don't actually have to have an opinion about everything. but,
Right.
but that takes a different level of growth, and most people haven't made it there yet. Or the other one is it just to be like, you know what? I don't know. I read the Bible for me. I'm not concerned about other people, and there's nothing wrong with y'all. So before I dismissed him, I let him know, when you read through the Bible, since you're a new Christian, you ain't been trying this for even a year yet, and you have all these opinions about my lifestyle. I said, just remember that that book that you're reading is an American. It did not come from white conservative people, even though they've been in charge of the interpretations of it. It's not their book, and it is not an American book. It is from the Middle East, and it was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic. And until you go back and read those original languages and learn to decipher them for yourself, then you are judging me off of someone else's opinion on someone else's book.
That that is such a great way to put it, and that is absolutely so true. And so many things have been misinterpreted. That being one of them. And I don't understand why churches call themselves church, right? Christianity is supposed to be about love and peace and joy and the opposite of judging. Yet that it's preached from the pulpit, from the pulpit. I have never understood that. Why anybody would be judged or condemned, first of all. But secondly, the way it's interpreted is absolutely wrong. God created you to be who you are. God created me to be who I am. And the best thing we can do is let each other live the way that God created them to be. The minute we start saying, no, if you are part of that community, you're destined for hell, that's bad, it's a sin, it's wrong, then you're slapping God in the face and you're saying, God, what you created is wrong. How can you say that? How can you say that you believe in God, you believe in a higher power that created us all and loves us all, but made a big mistake in a lot of people's lives? How the two just do not go together. And it's so misunderstood. It's such a hard thing for me to wrap my head around why anybody would ever want to condemn anything that God created and say that it's bad or that it's wrong or that it's sin when God created it. It doesn't make sense to me.
It never will make sense because it's nonsensical.
Right. Right. True.
But the inner working thing there is arrogance, because it is a very arrogant and high-minded and condescending thing to go in to text and to treat people that way, because inherently what you're saying is my life is so great and your life is so not great. See, but see, the devil has deceived them because they think they're doing God's work, but they're not. But we've seen this in the Bible before many, many times. But Paul, the apostle, is the greatest example because, and I think this is one of the big reasons why God put this story in the Bible. Now, remember, the Bible is only a snapshot of what happened. So much more happened than what's recorded. These were just what God felt like should make the final cut. So Saul, before he turns into Paul, is just like Republicans today and all these conservative people who have these high and mighty opinions on what other people should be doing. And he just cannot have it. He's insulted at the way they're living. We can't have none of this. And so he goes and gets the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin is like the religious people who were the law of the land. So basically he's going to get government approval to persecute people like Texans persecuting women who want to get abortions and the people who help them. It's the same damn thing. And so, and he's doing it in the name of righteousness, just like the Republicans are supposedly doing it in the name of righteousness. And on his way to Damascus to go and persecute more people so he can force them to live the way he believes they should live according to his interpretation of scripture. Jesus like, no, bitch, stop. You doing too much.
I'll blind you for a minute, as a matter of fact, and really get your attention, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So this has all been written before. And so my message and my ministry is not to try to talk to idiots like that who are because there's nothing but God knocks sense into people like that, as has been demonstrated. But what I can do is help people to stop receiving negative messages from people like that and then hurting themselves because of it. Because until we enlighten and we ascend to the point that we do not let what other people say affect us, we let what other people say affect us. That requires growth and maturity. And people are going to listen to other people, be they on social media, in pulpits, whatever kind of platform. People give ear to people, and then people let what people say change them until they grow enough to stop doing that. And so my job and my task is to help the weakest among us, the people who feel the smallest among us to become independent spiritually, mentally. And so,
Yeah, that's a big task and it's a beautiful one because there's not many people doing what you're doing. And people need to hear that who they are is good and wonderful and they've been beautifully and wonderfully made and to stop letting other people interfere with them.
that's a big task, and I don't feel overwhelmed by it because as the Hebrew Bible says, power belongs to God. And that no matter how much we may plant, water, only God can give the increase. So I don't have stress on me like how preachers do when they feel bad if nobody receives the Lord in service on Sunday. They feel they make a whole big deal if nobody stands up to receive Christ during the benediction on Sunday because they feel like it's a personal blow to their ego that their message couldn't move one person to accept the Lord. But you don't really know what changes happen in people. You see, that's about that preacher's ego. So I have enough sense, thank God, at this point in my 40 years to just do what I do and sit back and see what God's gonna do. The pressure isn't on me. So
Right,
not.
right. Yeah, that's good. And by the way, your 40 years are like somebody else's 80 years. You have lived, and not only have you lived, but you live to tell about it. You know that your story helps other people and the things that you know and the way that you know the things that you know affect people and help so many people. Like I just can't even imagine how many lives you've touched.
Well, me either. I haven't the foggiest, but I just know it'll be like more and more. So let's talk about Haiti. So in your book, Love Is, you get into Haiti. You have an interesting kind of like love and hate emotional tango with Haiti. It's like you love it, but you hate it. You say once you've been there, it has a way of pulling you back. In the book, you state, I'm going to read a little excerpt real quick. It says, flying over Haiti like flying over Jurassic Park. You see the lush mountains slowly rolling out into the gorgeous green plains and finally the sandy fringe of the turquoise Caribbean. But you don't see the carnivorous monsters waiting to devour whoever dares the land. What would tell me about the carnivorous monsters?
It's tough there. It is hard there. It is like two steps forward, three steps back. Like anything that you try to do or anything you want to do, there are roadblocks with every turn. And and it's not so much saying like it's something that I don't like, that I'm American, so I know better. And if you just listen to me, your life could be so much better. It's not that. It's that the government is really not for the people. And so it's really against the people. There are people that make money on poverty. So they don't want to see a change. They don't want to see people elevate their lives, people live a healthier, better life, eating every day, having a place to lay their head at night, education, the simple things in life that we all take for granted that don't exist for a whole lot of millions of people just in Haiti alone. And there are just these monsters that live to devour anything good that is happening and step in the way of it so that progress can't be made. It's a tough place to work, a tough place to live.
I think it's interesting the way you worked, tough stories like that. And the one about the Catholic non-hope that I hope we have time to get to later into this book about love is because you basically took that scripture in First Corinthians 13 and broke it down and you took a year of your life and you tried it all out. Love is patient, love is kind. And one would think hearing that is going to be a nice, flowery book all about just good love and good Skittles and fucking gummy bears like that. But you know, you know, but actually shit got real, intermittently throughout the read. And so Haiti. So when people think about Haiti, a lot of people think about voodoo, witchcraft, hoodoo, and all of that. A very ignorant ass family member of mine, when Haiti had their most recent earthquake, God bless them, he said some stupid shit, to which I shut him down immediately. As soon as he heard about the earthquake, or whenever I was around him, he said, "Oh well, that's because of all of that voodoo they have down there," as if to say it is the people of Haiti's fault for receiving the earthquake. And I told him, yes, after I flicked my imaginary blonde hair out of the way, I told him, as you do when you're about to open the library on a motherfucker. I was like, okay, you haven't been to Haiti, never. I know you haven't taken the time to pray for them, ever. How dare you say something so negative and so presumptuous about these people? And you're supposed to be this church going person, God fearing, and that's the best you can do. So,
It's an ignorance. There's no doubt about it. Really, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, so does this same person, if they're sitting next to somebody in church and that person receives a cancer diagnosis, and they say, well, it's because of the sin in your life. It's because of is that what they're doing? Because basically it's the same, right? They're condemning a whole nation, but it's the same thing as saying that if anything bad happens to anybody, it's because of that they brought it on themselves, which is completely ignorant for sure.
well, they say the same thing about those of us in the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. We get HIV. They go, well, that's what you get for being gay, you know. But the joke's going to be on them because the Lord said, God said that God is not mocked whatsoever man sow, that also will He reap. And He said, if you give mercy, you'll receive mercy. But if you dish out judgment without mercy, then He said you're going to get judgment without mercy. And so all of this being mean to people and stuff like that make a person feel powerful on this plane of existence. But when you die, there is no currency. Like you cannot buy your way. Angels and demons don't give a fuck about money or about titles or about buildings or about the things that we chase after in this earth. And so we are a fool if we put more stock into what we can gain in this earth, be it power or power over people, as opposed to being nice to people and showing love. There's so many examples of that, from the parable about the rich young ruler to the way the Satan tempted Jesus in the wilderness and tried to offer him all the kingdom of the world. This is a vice of the devil to try to deceive us, and it's so like plain. But the Lord doesn't open someone's eyes, they're not gonna see it. So 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 this ignorant family member, he knows enough about Haiti, even in passing, to know that there's a strong concentration of like a voodoo and hoodoo there. So in your book, you write that nearly every Haitian practices voodoo and believes in God. And there is cultural voodoo and good reasons for the ongoing existence of the religion. I want to read an article, a small article. This is the last reading tirade I'm going to go on in this interview, because there's hoodoo, there's a voodoo, there's a voodoo, which I want to let you talk more about that, and then there's like witchcraft. There are differences, and I had to really look this up to find this out. And even in the research of it, different websites said slightly different things. It almost feels like it's something that if you weren't like raised in it, you may not know exactly what the fuck it is you're talking about, or unless you knew someone really close. So I'm going to read this, and I'm interested how this compares with your personal experience living in Haiti. Now tell us how much time total do you think you spent in Haiti?
Oh gosh, probably altogether it would be in the years, because for years I spent a portion of every month in Haiti and then other times in Haiti. So I don't know, but a lot. I've spent a lot of time in Haiti.
Okay. So Okay, so just bear with me for a second, y'all. And you know I love to read, so reading is fundamental, as Mama RuPaul would tell us. So okay. And this I pulled, and this is going to go in the show notes. This is from a website called www.differencebetween.net. And so, all right, here we go. So hoodoo and voodoo may sound the same, but the terms are related opposites. Both hoodoo and voodoo are widely practiced and share similar elements and roots in Africa, particularly West Africa, seem to come up in my research. Both are also products of mixed beliefs that include pagan traditions, ancient worship, and elements of European religions. However, the main difference between hoodoo and voodoo is that the latter is actually an existing religion practiced by people, while the former is considered folk magic. Voodoo as a religion is an organized institution with established practices like religious representatives or leaders, teachings, and religious services or rituals. Hoodoo as folk magic lacks this foundation and organization. Voodoo invokes the power of the Loas in the African gods and deities. However, hoodoo practitioners invoke the Loas by using Catholic saints. Voodoo is practiced by non-Roman Catholics, while hoodoo's practitioners are often Roman Catholics who use both the African concept of gods and the religious saints of Catholicism. Hoodoo practitioners are also followers of spiritualism. The specific term ascribed to a voodoo practitioner is a voodoo sant. While hoodoo practitioners are often referred to as root doctors or healers, a hoodoo practitioner often sees hoodoo as a sort of personal power that can help them or other people through their knowledge of herbs, minerals, animal parts, bodily fluids, and possessions. The magic can be used based on one's inclinations, desires, interests, and habits. Hoodoo and its practitioners empower themselves by accessing the gods and other supernatural forces in order to bring improvement or decline to a person's life. With this variety of knowledge and power, a practitioner can help a person in all aspects of life, including luck, love, evil, and restraining enemies. Voodoo is the original religion, while hoodoo is the result of religious persecution and suppression. Hoodoo developed by adopting and blending some foreign beliefs and religion to hide its African origins, which were considered pagan and unacceptable in the society largely dominated by Christians. Aside from being a religion, voodoo is also a culture and a way of life. Voodoo often specializes only in magic powers and the benefits that the magic can bring. Voodoo can be practiced as a hobby, an economic income, or a charity act. There is also a difference in the places of influence of both voodoo and hoodoo. Voodoo is popular and thrives in former French colonies like Mississippi and Louisiana, while hoodoo is more popular in the southern part of America. Additionally, hoodoo was brought to the New World by African slaves, and voodoo arrived through Haiti, a former French colony. Voodoo, though purer and more ancient, is often compared to hoodoo. Voodoo encompasses a variety of fields in society, such as culture, philosophy, art, and music, heritage, language, medicine, justice, spirituality, and power. Hoodoo, on the other hand, is just a fraction of all this, and is also more focused on the power and spiritual side than anything else. What do you think?
Then, wow, I just learned a lot. I have to say, yeah, it's such an interesting thing because I think, earlier you were talking about Christianity. You were talking about how people sitting in pews who love Jesus, yet they condemn other Christians or condemn people's lives, condemn what God made people to be, or just look for ways to judge, right? And so there's this good side of them that loves Jesus. And hopefully we'll learn how to be better and better and better at being Jesus to other people and really understanding that. And so then here you're talking about hoodoo and voodoo that have elements of that as well, right? Like there's good or cultural, it's not all just animal sacrifice and zombies. It's there's parts of it that are intertwined in culture and in the richness of countries and origins, and I don't know, kind of makes people who they are, but at the same time they can love Jesus
Mhm.
in the midst of it.
Did you know anyone who practiced either of these personally?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Voodoo. Yeah. Right. I do. I do. I I have had both positive and negative experiences with voodoo. The positive things that I've seen have more to do with culture, have more to do with when you are raised in this culture of voodoo. There are so many things like I've got this really good friend, a doctor who is this incredible Haitian doctor who has explained a lot of it to me. And we walked by this tree one day and it's, I don't remember what they call the tree, but basically, if two people are fighting against each other, one believes they are right, the other one believes they are right, then they both are supposed to go to this tree and state their, how they're right, state their message, whatever it happens to be, and that the roots of the tree will come around the feet of the one who's wrong. And that person will not get out of there, will not be able to leave the tree. So it's, their death, basically. So people don't want that. People believe that that will happen with this particular tree, this particular kind of tree, and they don't want that. So they're more apt to say, you know what, I was wrong. You know what, I did make that story up. I don't want to die. So they're not gonna fight as much for their cause when they know that it's not true and it might take them to the tree. Well, there's something to be said for that, right? And so there's a lot of that kind of thing that happens. And and then at the same time, one night I was sleeping outside. That's in my book. I was sleeping outside with the tarantulas and the snakes and the chupacabras and the whatever is lurking in Haiti, and heard a sound that will never get out of my head. And even though I didn't see it, I knew exactly what it was. Voodoo drums were going in the distance. And then I heard a dog cry, not howl, not bark, not screech, but a dog cry. And it was horrific. It was a horrible sound to hear. The dog, you knew, was in so much pain and so miserable. And I've never I had heard that sound before. And what it was is they were skinning a dog alive, and that dog was crying. Well, I I don't care if you're an animal activist or not, or if you kill flies or not. Nobody should skin an animal alive ever. And and for that to be part of a religious practice is pretty counterintuitive when you should love all of what God has created. And then to take an animal and make them suffer that way was horrible to hear, horrible to know that it was even happening.
Yeah, I concur with how horrible that sounds. I wonder what was the purpose of the ritual? What were they trying to achieve?
I don't know. I don't really know. I know that rituals like that are not that common in Haiti. It's sort of like religious extremists. So for the most part, Haitians, the part of voodoo that comes into their life is more the cultural voodoo, the different beliefs, where we have walking under a ladder is bad luck, or breaking a mirror is 7 years of bad luck, or whatever, a black cat crossing your path. They have things like don't pick up a child from behind, but the child will never grow. Don't tell a mama that baby's beautiful because then the baby's going to grow up ugly. Or, or the tree is going to go around your feet, whatever. So it's more the cultural things that are the beliefs in Haiti. Most Haitians are not out in the middle of the night beating drums and skinning dogs alive. And I think a lot of times when there are things like that, it has to do with curses and people putting curses on other people. And that's another thing that I've witnessed in Haiti is whether there is truly a demonic curse on somebody, or it is you believe that there's a demonic curse on you. It is as real can be. And I've noted people who have died because there was a curse on them. And however that, whether it was Satan doing work or it was just because in their mind they believed so strongly in this curse that they knew they were going to die, so they did. I don't know the answer to that for sure, but that kind of stuff happens as well. So, the voodoo dolls, the whatever, right? I mean, you have something against somebody, you go to a voodoo priest and put a hex on them, put a curse on them, and they're for real. It's scary stuff, right? Not good.
not, not very good.
No.
So, what was the? You said you had positive and negative. What was the positive experience you had with voodoo?
There are a lot of beliefs that bind people together. They have people watch out for other people. That you know how we can be influenced by things that we're taught or things that we believe, and but it can either be positive or negative. And positive influence, it can be like when you're a kid and your dad says you do that to your sister, and I'm gonna give you a whooping. You don't do it out of fear. Well, there are things like that that happen that they don't hurt out of fear of because of cultural beliefs, things that would happen to them if they were to do something. So that's not all bad. If it's born out of something that we don't understand, or maybe negative, or maybe whatever, if with the end result being a positive thing, it's, kind of hard to weigh it out in your mind and think, well, then is it okay? And I think that some of it is okay because I think then you grow too and hopefully grow into a new understanding. But meanwhile, are learning as you go, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Absolutely. So, the negative aspect of it for you, was it what you described, or did someone put a root or some sort of jinx on you?
I've never had that happen. I can't wait to hear your personal story with do. I have to say, ever since you told me you had one, I've been anxious to hear about it from your own lips. So, yeah. Yeah. But as far as I know, nobody's ever put a curse on me.
I think
Um,
I think it's interesting how this has like ties with, like, the Catholic Church and everything like that. So it's not the first time in reading this article that I've heard that a voodoo can be used for good and that people who do it also believe in God. Certain people have access, like into the spiritual realm in order to be able to receive, how shall I say this? To affect change in the physical plane through communication with spirits. Now, whether that's your clairvoyant people, your prophets, your prophetesses, different sorts of people have different sorts of spiritual inclinations, access to the other realm and stuff like that. And it comes out in different ways, be it some sort of spiritual reading or some sort of, for those of us like me who dream, and different things like that, the angelic handwriting people do, where their hand moves on its own or under the guidance of the Holy Ghost or an angel or whatever you choose to believe. And what it looks like scribble to everyone else, but that person can read what it's saying, and it's like the true truth there. It's unadulterated. So it's just, for all the mystique that revolves around the Catholic Church, they don't often, well, actually, they never mention their potential ties to voodoo, you know, and different things like that. I, but when I think about, all how the Catholics in the world like to burn candles all the time to all these different saints, dead people and stuff like that. I think that it's true. You feel like what the probably the ties there. I think whether people know it or not, because in the practices of voodoo and witchcraft, there is a lot of candle burning that happens. A shitload of candle burning that happens. And so it could be that when somebody lights a candle to Saint Jude or whoever, you know, You're all Catholic and stuff, but baby, you a little bit voodoo too.
That's interesting. I've never really thought about that. I was raised Catholic and actually have
Poor
a
thing.
deep, what's that?
Poor thing.
I actually have a deep appreciation for the Catholic Church. I think clumping everybody together can be hard, right? And putting everybody in a clump. And really, whether you're Catholic, Baptist, Lutheran, Jewish, Hindu, you're an individual. And it's your individual walk with it that makes the difference. And I know many, many, many incredible Catholics. And Mother Teresa, for one. Not that I know her because she's passed on, but she was an incredible, wonderful woman who did incredible things. And so when we clump people together, I think we have to be a little bit careful just because there are wonderful people and there are difficult people in everything.
Yeah. I don't mind the people in the Catholic Church. I mind the institution that is the Catholic Church. So like I look at it as a way that tends to damage people. I don't give a shit if someone's a Catholic or not. Like, and it's just like how I'm not trying to say fix hard-headed, hateful people. My ministry is to the people they hurt. I'm not trying to change the Catholic Church or argue with them. My ministry is to help undo the negative mental constructs that people leave the Catholic Church with. And so when I say I don't care for the Catholic Church, I mean I don't care for the Catholic Church, not its parishioners, not its people. They don't know no better. Or they're saying they're being abused by them. Well, some shit sometimes, literally, if you're an altar boy, then,
Right.
and otherwise mental and emotional. You know, so yeah, I don't have any problem with the people, but the institutions. So yeah, let me clarify that. If I ever say like fuck this religion or that religion on my show, I just mean the religion itself, the people who administer it, but not the attendees and stuff like that. You know,
I
that's a,
get it.
that's a whole other different thing. And my main complaint against the Catholic Church is how they insist upon having like a person in between God and whoever the parishioner or the congregant, the churchgoer is. I don't believe in confessing sins to a human. I don't believe in kissing the Pope's ring. I don't believe in setting anybody else up on that pedestal because that was the whole point and purpose of Jesus coming here to remove a man from the equation. And I feel like Catholicism puts man back in the equation. And that just doesn't make sense to me. And I preach spiritual independence. I want people to go to God for themselves. When you need forgiveness, get it right now. Not once you make it to a fucking confessional booth. When you need, if you want to do communion, you can give it to yourself at home. God is accessible to us. He's as near as the air we breathe. We have access to him around the clock, 24/7, sitting right up in our living room with us. We do not need a church. We do not need people. Now, if you just feel like you need to have that, great, wonderful. And many people will start out that way, but there is an over dependence on institution, religion, and people that cripples people's spiritual growth.
Oh my gosh. I wish I had, well, this is being recorded. That's a good thing because I love the way you just put that. Thank you for that because it's so true that, it's the institutions that hurt us. And like what the Catholic Church did with the altar boys is just a crime above crimes and continues to happen, unfortunately, and is for any institution to allow things like that to continue is unfathomable. Like why it's really sad. So I totally get what you're saying. And I totally agree with you. You're right on going back to your 80 years of wisdom.
Right. And so I don't make allowances for organizations like that anymore. I used to be like, when I attended churches, I would see some shit that make me raise an eyebrow and I'd go, well, no one's perfect. The organization's not perfect, but no, I don't. They preach too bold of a message, be it Catholic churches, Lakewood Church, like who I used to be a part of before I got kicked out of there, or wherever. Like you exist on the financial backings of the people who you hurt. You know? And so hell to the no, like these incongruencies, you cannot be fucking the shit out of all of these altar boys and the priest who gets caught and is guilty, you just move him to another parish where he can fuck more altar boys. Like that tells me that the institution is rotten to its core, it's corrupted, and that the parishioners are so they just believe they need to have it so much that they just keep going and supporting it anyway. But I believe any source of abuse must be cut off. There's no way in hell if I was married to a man, I would let him abuse my child and just be like, okay, well, you're pretty much good. So I'll stay with you.
Right, right. You're 80% good, just 20% bad. So therefore, you're right. Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a whole other interview about why we allow ourselves to be subjugated or subjected to religious abuse from churches and institutions because we feel like we need to stay there. I'm speaking now to not just people who stay in Catholic churches or other abusive religions, but people who are not straight, who attend churches that have a doctrine against their lifestyle. I know gay people who do this. I'm like, they're going to church and they're like, well, I'm just not going to pay attention to that sermon that's telling me I'm going to go to hell. But that's having an impact on your subconscious mind and everything like that. It's hurting your spirit. When somebody tells you something's wrong with you, why would you support that church and still go there? Because your parents went there. You're afraid if you stop going, you're going to burn up and go to hell. You know, if somebody was abusing you verbally, you wouldn't stay in a relationship with them. Why are you going to this church and letting them talk down to you like this? It's the stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. But I think that a lot of people are raised in a family where church is that important that if you don't go on Sunday, something's wrong. You know, if you don't go Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, you know, whatever, something's wrong. And and your relationship with God should have nothing to do with what building you're in.
preach it, sister.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about the church bullshit, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the Catholic non now. I was gonna save this for last, but in your book, you wrote nuns are scary. Ruler on knuckles kind of scary. The kind of scary that makes you sit up straight, turn in all your homework, and not talk during class. 3 critical things to know in a nun's classroom are chewing gum is like a cow chewing its cud. A messy desk is the devil's playground. And if a sister, meaning a nun, tells you to jump, you don't ask how high without raising your hand first. And so, girl, I read through when I was reading that, just emotions of fear prevailed, came upon me. And I'm looking at, okay, they're instilling fear into people in order to dominate them, even when you're in school as a Catholic. And but the Hebrew Bible says that God has not given us a spirit of fear. And so the same reason why I left the like the alcoholics and crystal method, like the whole anonymous drug movement, is because I realized it was a fear-based program, and that is incongruent with the word of God, because he told us not to be afraid. And so when I read this, I'm like, okay, these people, these kids are in school. These nuns are like fucking Hitler or Vladimir Putin, whichever dictator you prefer. And they're like afraid to like move or breathe. That's not good for anybody, especially not in those young developmental ages. But what do you think about this? Who you are now looking back on this? And would you let a kid that you would have be in the same situation?
Yeah. I mean, I think back in the day, it was considered respect, maybe, but it's not respect. You know, there is a fear. It's different. It was for me, my life experience, completely different having a nun stand in front of a classroom than having just a woman stand in front of a classroom. And and yeah, we were all afraid of the nuns. I know that that's such a generalization because I'm sure that many people have had great experiences with kind nuns. And so, you know, I don't want to put it out there that all nuns are scary and bad, But my personal experience is I was scared to death of Sister Mary Lewis, and everybody was like, it was definitely a fear for sure.
And if you and and if you were to have a kid at that age, would you allow them to be in this sort of situation?
I would not. I would not. No, I would not. I screwed my kids up enough. That would just about screw them up even more. So yeah, no, I don't think it's necessary. I think there are ways to learn English without it being fear-based.
Did
So
they
yeah,
really hit you on the knuckles?
they would, not me, because I was too afraid to ever get in trouble. So I never got again on the knuckles, but yeah, yeah, they would. Yes.
So the nuns did physically abuse the students.
There was capital or corporal punishment, whatever it's called, with spanking. Spanking was definitely a thing for sure. And with a paddle. And fortunately, I never went down that road either because, again, I was too afraid to do anything wrong to have that happen. So, but yeah, definitely physical things definitely happened. But, it was just common back then. There was even in the public schools, they used to spank kids,
Right.
which how demeaning and demoralizing, right? And so fortunately that's gone. But yeah, no, there was definitely a fear. You did what they told you to do for sure.
Yeah, they beat people in my school, and growing up in the hood, I would get beat at home with belts and stuff like that. Nobody should be hitting anybody. Period. It's a period with a T at the end. It's not justified.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think it's one thing when there's a 3-year-old that's just kind of being rebellious and doing what they're, not told to do, to just kind of, not spank them, but maybe just
A tap.
let them know whatever you need to do to let them know what they're doing is wrong and that, will be tolerated. Like, you have to be able to discipline your children. But yeah, yeah, it's not good. Yeah, I agree. Not good. Never in school. Never, never, never. Yeah.
Never, never, ever.
Hmm.
And so let me circle back. So I had mentioned witchcraft. I'm going to read a definition of witchcraft. So witchcraft is magic, spelled with a K, and not religious. Anyone can be a witch, but not all of them are Wiccan. Dualism, polytheistic, or monotheistic, meaning you worship many gods or just one god. Being a witch is not about religion, it's about the craft of magic. And so I feel like some of the voodoo, hoodoo, witchcraft have some sort of intersectionality at some point, but at the same time, they have their own unique characteristics. Now, witchcraft seems to be the most extreme of them all because it's not tied to like a belief in a higher power. Witchcraft is all about what you can do. And so, what I think happened to me when I was a teenager was more on the realm of witchcraft. So what happened was this guy, I was 15, I was the altar boy in a not at a Catholic church, I was at a Pentecostal church, and that was just the title because I sat on the altar, probably the only altar boy in Pentecostal church history. My pastor was just unique, and I was her assistant, and I was called the altar boy. And this guy was the choir director. He was like 21, 22 or something like that in that age range. And so he had a fixation on me. He approached me. We ended up like kissing and establishing a sort of relationship. So yes, totally inappropriate, but I'm 15. I don't know. All I know is this guy is hot and he's paying me attention. So what do I need to do to get more of this attention? And so at some point he manages to obtain a windbreaker from me, which he didn't want to give back. And I later on realized why, because he was going to use it in his ceremony or his ritual. And I started at first I started smelling like this cologne that he would wear. His his spirit would come around me, it would manifest itself as in the fragrance of his cologne. People have said this sort of thing happens, say when their grandmother or a relative dies, sometimes they'll just be sitting down and they'll just catch a whiff of a fragrance that they associate with them out of nowhere, seemingly. Okay, I think that's happened enough for most people to agree that that's a thing. And so, but this person was still alive. And I'm just sitting at my house, even though we're around me, and I'm smelling his cologne. Now I start having dreams about him every night. Not some nights, every night, every night. And
Wow.
sometimes good dreams, sometimes they're terrible, chaotic nightmares. I felt my bed shaking and stuff like that, like exorcist shit. We go on a trip to Mexico, and he's with the church and everything like that. And he's trying to have sex with me, and I'm like on the fence about it. It didn't happen. He gets mad, and he like totally changes and turns into this whole monster. At this point, I get like more confused than anything. We get back. The whole thing. It's a whole thing. The pastor, the pastor of the church, the head pastor, not his wife, but the pastor of the church, of course, preaches a sermon against homosexuality the first Sunday after this happens, as they do. And so he also called into his office and, read us for filth and was telling us we can't be doing, this gay shit and everything like that and so on and so forth. And so after this, my dreams with him got even worse. Oh, and then he also had a female, I think she was female, fiance in California who moved to church that I didn't know about during the months that he was dating me and courting me and stuff like that. So I go to a counseling session with my female pastor, who's also a prophetess, a high clairvoyant. She has like all the gifts and everything like that. And so she starts digging into what's going on, and she's explaining to me like, he's burning candles and stuff like that. And I think he used a candle called it in Tranquil, which I didn't learn about this till years ago when I started to delve more into this. The in Tranquil candle sends, it goes and it finds a wandering spirit that's able to cross between the worlds, and it enlists the services of this spirit to go and vex the person who is the object of your affection. And the spirit will take all peace from them until that person comes and bees with you.
Mm.
And so I was miserable for about like 6 months after the whole Mexico incident. Whenever I was awake, I smelled his odor. Whenever I was asleep, I dreamt of him. I couldn't escape him no matter where I went. And and my pastor was telling me, well, he's got you under a spell. And what he was trying to do, and was successful at it, he wanted to have me all to himself. And so he took my soul and he basically ran off with it. And then we got into the argument in Mexico and we had to break it, like it ripped, it tore us apart. But since he had my soul and I was trying to get away from him, what she said was like it tore my soul. And my heart felt like a burning in my chest, like if someone took an X-Acto knife and just went all Edward Scissorhands slash on it. And it felt like a searing, like molten lava was like pouring out of like this chest cavity. It was like the worst pain I'd ever felt in my life. I still feel it. Like if I think about it, I can still feel it. It was just like searing. And my evangelist was telling me I couldn't understand how a person could have access to somebody else without that person's permission. I'm 15. I'm sure she's weighing what can I explain to him, with a 15-year-old brain, stuff like that. I'm thinking the whole thing's my fault and everything like that. And she's like, no, he's out here, the whole relationship wasn't supposed to happen. So much less the whole trying to possess me and everything. And so he wanted me all himself and everything like that. And it took 6 months of torture. I was so fucking miserable. Like my grades suffered everything. I was just in hell day in and day out. This was going into my 10th grade year. It was the summer that Princess Diana died because she died when we were in Mexico. I remember that because it was on the news. And then one Sunday morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table doing like homework, math problems or whatever. And I felt like the weight and the burden of this whole spell he had me under lift off of me. It was like, it was like such a relief that I had to get up and like go for a walk, like a walk that I hadn't been able to take in over 6 months. And my grandmother was just hanging out at the end of the driveway. And I just, I just walked down there and just looked at her and I knew that everything had changed. And I don't know if my evangelist, my pastor's wife, who was my counselor, was somewhere at church praying for me because it was Sunday and we weren't at church or what. She had told me that she would work to break the spell from off me because she had that kind of power. but she said that it would take time. And I was like, I wanted it to be quick, why we can't just do it now? And she was just explaining to me, some things take time. Some stuff God does quickly, some stuff takes time. And it's just the way it works. And so the deliverance did not come overnight or quickly like I wanted it to because I was miserable. I just really wanted to I just couldn't find happiness anywhere. And so, but from that Sunday morning on, I never smelled his fragrance again. I never had a dream about him again. It ended. The spell was broken. I was able to get my jacket back from him eventually, reluctantly, argumentatively. And when I did, I couldn't wash his odor out of it no matter how much I tried. I ended up having to put it in the trash anyway. And he was using that as it was explained to me by Evangelist Nelson to feel close to me. And I'm sure it strengthened his spell. He never allowed me into his house or anything like that. But I was able to peek into it one time. I was with somebody who went to go over and visit him for like a moment, and I could see like an altar candles thing going on, but I was never permitted in there. And so,
Wow. Wow. I, you know, it had to be so much deeper than, like a broken leg might take 6 months to heal, like an injury that gives you pain might take a while to heal. But this wasn't just a part of your body. This was your soul. This was your whole being. I can't even imagine the feeling. It, of course, your grades would suffer. I would think your relationships with other people suffered, friendships, whatever. I would think anything that you did would suffer when it's so all encompassing.
yeah, it was like a just being in the middle of a tornado. Just couldn't go anywhere. There's no escaping it. But to God be the glory for his mighty hand and his outstretched arm, because when he got ready, just like the children of Israel, they didn't come out when they wanted to. They had to wait until the appointed day, the appointed time. And when that time came, there was nothing that could stop my deliverance.
Mhm.
Now, this man, he was pure evil. He died a few years later. I thought it was cancer at the time, but because pustules and shit broke out all over him, and he was bent over on a cane. It's a young, fit, athletic, no body fat, six pack, all of that. But he shriveled up and died. And I think he was buried at the age of 24. And I found out, that he had AIDS and he was running around trying to intentionally spread it to as many people as he could so he could kill them.
Oh my. Wow. What a legacy. Goodness. Oh, yeah. That's sad. That's sad. I feel bad for him. It was evil, obviously, what he was doing, but what happens in a person's life that makes you like that?
Well, for what I understand from what my evangelist Nelson, she was my pastor, and I was her assistant, my spiritual counselor, the prophetess, the clairvoyant. What she was explaining to me was when people would come to her who have gotten the HIV, she said they either have a very angry, sometimes they have an angry reaction and they blame everyone else and they get really pissed off about it. When I got HIV, I caved in and blamed myself, and then I became recluse and withdrew from people. Some people go the opposite direction, and they're all like, fuck everyone. I'm gonna take everyone down with me. Damn it. You know, it evokes a response from people, and so when people are like, "Oh, you can just take medication for it and fix it," true, but you got to get over the mental health hurdle first that comes with having your body invaded with something that you can't get rid of. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty heavy. It's pretty big stuff, right?
It's still to this day that everybody makes it over that mental health hump first. That has to be addressed first before we get to the medication. And so that's what happened. I go into detail even further about that in my memoir, which I emailed you a copy of it. It's finished finally. I sent you a copy just a few minutes ago.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you.
and it's so and so and so yeah, so let's circle back to Haiti for just a second. I wanted to know, tell us about your rays of hope International, your nonprofit. I need you to plug that.
Sure. Yeah. It's a partnering organization. So we work with people in their own country that have a passion, a vision, and mission to do something to help people in their own country. So they understand the culture, they understand the language, they understand the need, and they just need somebody to walk alongside, not telling them what to do, but seeing what support they need. So sometimes it's a business plan, sometimes it's, some startup funding. It could be equipment or supplies that they need, a building they need built, whatever it happens to be to get going. And then always with a plan for self sustainability. So they're not always chasing dollars and they're able to continue the work that they feel that they're led to do. That's reasonable.
I'm glad that you were able to find a way to be a permanent presence, not just in Haiti, but in other countries too, and that you were able to overcome the governmental obstacles.
Right. Right. I mean, in every country, you have to do that. I mean, there's governmental obstacles everywhere and some much tougher than others. And so you just kind of try to fly under the radar and get the work done because governments are hard to fight sometimes.
True, 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 true. I know what I wanted to say. I wanted to say something else about the witchcraft thing. So I wanted to be transparent about that story because sometimes people have strange things happen to them and they think they're going crazy. And and see, it's difficult to go to like a mental health provider and be like, think someone has a voodoo doll with my face on it and they're fucking with me, because you don't know if you're going to get admitted to a psychiatric, depending on who the mental health person is. And so then, because other people besides that guy does this, like I was at a store in New Orleans, and voodoo and witchcraft are big in New Orleans. You got voodoo shops
Mhm.
and shit. And I was getting candles and stuff like that to protect myself. So you can burn like say white candles. You can use like white bars of soap, olive oil soap to shield yourself from spells and different things like. And I was asking her like what she does for work, which is a question I do not ask people anymore because I realize what a shallow and superficial question it is. No one cares. They're just going to judge you by your occupation or it's just pointless banner. I ask people other questions when I meet them. But at this point, I hadn't evolved to that level. And I asked this girl, oh, what does she do for work? And she was like, oh, general destruction spells, try to break people up and stuff like that. She thought I was asking her like what sort of witchcraft work does she do? Because it's referred to like that, like what kind of work, you're going to work on somebody, try to kill them, get them to lose their job, try to make them move. It's called working on people. Or and so she just said it as casually as the sky is blue. She just runs around breaking up relationships and shit because there's certain like candles and stuff, destructions that are designed to break up, to control, to dominate. So you have, different aspects of it. And so it happens more regularly than you might think. You don't have to be in Haiti or in West Africa or in New Orleans or none of that. You could be anywhere in this earth. This shit is common and then the people who make these witchcraft products ship them globally. So so be careful who you run off with. I'm not saying run around afraid and peeping around the corners and everything like that, but you do need to know your friends and your associates and shit like that because people have practices that you might not think that they're doing when you're not around them. And so, but if strange things start happening, it would manifest like, say, confusion coming out of nowhere in your relationship. Maybe you're great with your partner one day and one day you're not. It could be that somebody don't want y'all to be together. Sometimes people, you may have confusion come up on your job and shit like that and stuff like that, you know. So and how do you protect yourself? Ultimately, you got to be close enough to God and be praying for discernment and to be so wrapped up in the Holy Ghost and really really close to God to get deliverance from things like this. If you are not really close to God, then you are vulnerable to spiritual attack, and that's just the way it is. And so because you're dealing with spiritual forces here, and if you're not strong spiritually, and I know you can't mismanifest your way out of this. You have to have like an active force with that is sentient with a thinking for itself to yank you out of such clutches. And so I'm just going to leave that at that. Unless you want to say something on it for us, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, no, that's a lot. Uh, and but I think though, if you believe in God, I mean, God is obvious to me. I think God is obvious to most people, whether they want to recognize it or not. But if you believe in good spirit, then there's also the opposite of that. And that's real. And sometimes people choose to ignore that and blame other things or whatever. So I think acknowledging that that even exists, and what you shared, like I had no idea that it's so prevalent and that it's everywhere and that they're shipping all over the world, and that there are people that when you say, "What is your work?" and they answer, my work is to break up couples." That's some pretty big stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew a lady, she got cancer because of some sort of witchcraft somebody put in her food. Somebody put something in her food and gave her cancer. And so Evangelist Nelson, when she was alive, was working with her, and there was like spiritual baths and stuff that Evangelist Nelson gave her. And when she would take this bath, I think it was like this brown, some sort of shit was being pulled out of her system. That was the cancer coming out of her system. So you see, she had gone to all the doctors and everything like that, and they couldn't fix this cancer. But you see, it had spiritual foundations. It was the dark forces that had put that cancer in her. It wasn't natural. It was unnatural.
Wow.
And but through spiritual means, she was able to begin to get delivered from that. You see.
Wow. Yeah. Right.
Okay, so this is the last thing we're going to talk about. So, were you in Haiti during any of the earthquakes?
I was in Haiti, not during the big earthquakes, but for plenty of aftershocks. So I was in Haiti 2 weeks after the humongous earthquake that killed 200,000 people on January 12th, 2010.
And she still remembers the date exactly. I want to know, what did you what did you witness? What did you experience? And what do you think the greatest strength is in Haitian people?
It was a really, really tough time in Haiti. So many people lost their homes. Everybody lost someone that they loved. People lost limbs. You know, babies died, grandmas died. People were trapped under buildings for days. Some ended up dying. Some were just trapped for days and ended up living. There were tables that were turned into surgery tables, dining room tables, because doctors were coming to try to help and there wasn't any place to do it. And people didn't have a place to go. And there's the rain and the winds and the sun, the hot sun, and no protection from any of that. And people were afraid to sleep inside, afraid to sleep under a roof, right? Because they were just under a roof that caved in. And certainly not on a second floor or a third floor, which there are very many third floors in Haiti anyway, but to sleep inside. There were people that for months and months and months after the earthquake would not sleep inside, slept outside under a tarp. But the tarp started coming and the tarp started coming and relief started coming and help started coming. And these tent cities popped up everywhere. And within the tent city, there was leadership, and the leadership would get together and, what do they need for their tent city? And they would let it be known to whatever NGO was supplying food or clean water or latrines or whatever. They would get together and figure out the needs and then figure out a solution. And seeing that, it was like these little countries almost popping up everywhere. The people that lived in the tent cities became family to each other and looked out for each other. And the people that rose up as leaders, I didn't see any that were in it for themselves. They were the last in line to get the jar of peanut butter. They weren't the first in line saying, "I need this." They were saying, "I need this for my new family, my new community." And the bonds of those still run deep. I have a good friend that lived in a tent city for months, And his closest relationships are with people that lived in that same type of city with him. So the resilience that it takes, the fortitude, the strength that it takes to suffer. So, I mean, you're in grief, right? Your country's been destroyed, your neighborhood's been destroyed, crumbled buildings everywhere. It was hard to drive through Port-au-Prince because there was so much debris in the roads, and there's still debris when you go there this many years later. There's still buildings that were condemned that haven't been torn down yet, or rubble that was a building that hasn't been taken away yet. So you still see some of the effects of that earthquake and aftershocks. And then, of course, there was another one this past August. And to live in that, to see it every day, to have that remembrance every day, to lose people that you love, to be in fear for your own life, to then have these aftershocks and get up in the morning and smile, laugh, work, do, parent, get education, whatever. That takes a lot of guts. It would be so easy to just roll over and say, forget it. This is too much. Most people in their lifetime, everything that happens in their lifetime all together is not as much as what these people suffered in the 60 seconds that was the earthquake. So yeah, Haitian people are resilient, hardworking, big family people, love their family, watch out for each other. The friendships become extended family and support each other, root for each other, and help each other out. I get phone calls fairly regularly from a friend in Haiti, or another friend in Haiti that'll say, "Oh my word, I met this woman and her daughter wants to be a nurse. And this woman, she lost her husband and she's got 3 kids and she's got no way to support them. But her daughter wants to be a nurse. And if she can become a nurse, she'll be able to support the whole family. But there's no money to send her to nursing school. But she's really smart. And she took the test and she could get in, but she needs the money to go to school." Well, the money to go to school was, I think, $1,200, which sounds like a lot of money, but $1,200 doesn't buy you 2 credits in a college in the United States, let alone a nursing degree, right? And so, but that $1,200, that investment in that one life is going to change, who knows, countless lives, but for sure her entire family. And you don't see that everywhere. You don't see people just looking out for each other. A stranger, this woman was a stranger to my friend, but knew what it would mean for this. So of course I raised the money and sent the money. What an incredible investment that is. And to know that I can trust my friend, that he's not just hearing some story, but this is for real. And this woman was a stranger 5 minutes ago. And that's Haiti. I mean, that's don't you want to live with people like that? That they have your back that way? It's pretty incredible, right? Those that's 80.
I could tell from the gleam in your eyes that you're is love struck with them.
I am. It's true. It's true. Some of my best friends live in Haiti and are just some of the most incredible people I know.
Okay. And with that, any last words or closing words you have for the world?
I would say that, first of all, everyone should listen to your show every time it's on because it's amazing. And then when your memoir is published, I can't wait to read it. When your memoir is published, everyone should buy it because I know it's full of incredible wisdom among the stories. And that there is something that can change where you are right now. If you're discontent, if you're unhappy, your life isn't going in the direction that it should, whatever's going on, problems in a relationship, whatever, you can change that. You don't have to stay where you are. And by growing closer to God, That's certainly the most powerful way to make a change in your life, but also by respecting each other, respecting other people, and not looking for fault, and not judging or not condemning, but truly loving people will change your life dramatically, especially when you're not doing it to get something in return, but you're living because that's what you should do.
Love it is. All right. Kim Sorrelle, the author of Cry Until You Laugh, and the book that we spent a lot of time talking about today, which is called Love Is. KimSorrelle.com, and all of her contact information, social media will be in the showy notes, as it always is. Thank you so much for your beautiful spirit and your insight today, my sister.
Well, thank you for your wisdom and what you taught me today. I appreciate it so much. I love you, my brother.
Love you too, honey girl. Thank you all so much for taking time to listen to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. It really means everything to me. Look, if you love the show, you can find more information and resources at sexdrugsandjesus.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. Feel free to reach out to me directly at devannon@sexdrugsandjesus.com and on Twitter and Facebook as well. My name is Devannon, and it's been wonderful being your host today. And just remember that everything is going to be all right.